La cruauté, c'est l'extirper par le sang et jusqu'au sang. Dieu, le hasard bestial de l'animalité inconsciente de l'homme partout où on peut la rencontrer. Et qu'est-ce que vous nous foutez là, monsieur Artaud?
Hello and welcome back to the White Room. This is episode number 29 of your little feuilleton podcast on theater and some other things. And I say good evening to Amsterdam. Hello, Amsterdam.
Good evening to Argentina.
No, it is day, so good day to Ecuador, actually.
Good day, good day. Buen dia.
Yeah, buen dia. And good evening to, not Paris, to Théophile. Hello, Théophile. Where are you now?
Hello, Simon. I'm in the northeast of France. The city's name is Metz.
Metz. And it's in Lorraine.
Yes. It's near Luxembourg. And hello, Amsterdam. Hello, Ecuador.
Hello.
Buen dia.
Hello.
So we always start also, what is this podcast about? This is the White Room. We founded it 1 year ago. My name is Simon. I'm an actor in a little town in Germany. My group is called Studio 7 Theater. Yeah, I'm an actor, performer, musician, and also podcaster now. And I do this project together with Marije, who is in Amsterdam. Maybe you can say shortly what you do, because maybe we have some new listeners who don't know shit about us.
Oh my God. Well, then I would say to those new people, guess what is it that I do? And if you are right, you will get a prize. There you go.
So now you can all guess. We wait for you to guess.
No, but I would actually at this point not really know what to answer you, Simon.
Yes, that's true. Of course, I say I am, but so what do you do at the moment? You eat and podcast. So you will
That's
have
a big part of my life. It's a big part.
But actually, you're also
hang around online.
You used to, before this pandemic, you used to tap dance and perform.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also during.
I remember it.
Yeah, also during.
This was what I was doing. I was, yeah. We had some moments of meeting in that activity.
Mm.
But even there, I'm thinking these days that it's getting harder and harder. Maybe as I get also older. To say I do this or I do that, because I really feel the complexity of, the constellation of all that is gathering in this one, and who is also many, as we are all, and it's troubling me to answer you. Yes, I am a tap dancer, which I have said for 25 years with some kind of pride in carrying this strange, almost secret art of the tap dancer, and putting it and really embracing it as my professional identity. But it's troubling to me now at this point. In a good way.
Wow, this is like, I just wanted to, like in the United States, to ask, how are you? And then you say, oh, fine. But you responded really
sorry.
like we would do in Germany. In Germany, you can also
You know what,
like
Simon? True. You know what I will do, because I have to confess I have a plate of fast cooling pasta in front of me, and I will leave you to introduce our guest.
Yes.
And get into things, and I will be listening and will join you later.
We'll do like that. In this podcast, everything is possible. So what is this podcast about? As you said, it is not about pasta, but maybe it's about
feeding.
Maybe it's about feeding. Maybe it's about good cooking in a different kind of sense. And sure, this podcast is a very personal project. So we invite people and we speak about topics that we are interested in. We don't have any kind of journalistic interest. Sometimes we speak about current topics if they appear, but a lot of times we just don't speak on current topics. But like today, maybe we concentrate on something of the past, which we find is relevant today also. No, so this is a small hint, of course, on our topic today. But and for that, so yeah, today we are going to speak a little bit more about a theater person. We will characterize him later, Antonin Artaud, and I'm very happy that for that we have some help with Théophile, Choquet. Did I pronounce this right? Choquet?
Yes, perfectly.
Great.
Thank you.
Théophile, how are you? What do you do? What do you do? And
I'm fine, thank you, Simon. What I do? Well, it was interesting to listen to Marije and how it's difficult for all of us to define ourselves and what we do. Not only because we're artists, but also because we live in a time that question the borders of our occupations in life, and the contents of our activity change so much. Well, I used to say I'm an actor, and now I say I'm a theater artist. It's more large, even if I don't say it in French, because I don't like to say artiste in French, because I don't want to auto-qualify myself an artist. But if I am, I have the opportunity to speak in English or in another, I say a theater artist, because I even if I don't make theater now concretely in front of an audience, I think a lot about the theater making, about the theater's thinking and history, and I'm here basically working at home, writing articles, in contact with many colleagues here and there, and trying to have also some events like that to meet around a question, around a thematic, and it's a new activity. It's something I'm always discovering. It's maybe the second time I'm doing it in English, so I want you to forgive my mistakes. It's not my first language.
I think this is the most, I don't know if any native English people listen, but I think some do. And I think they always get crazy listening to us, because we are all dilettantes in English, and sometimes I listen to the recordings and I say, oh my God, how is my English so bad? But that's not a problem, because actually our English is more understandable than the real English. Because nobody understands the real English. Right. The English from Britain, nobody understands. Or from the
It's so true. It's so true.
We ruin the English
our
language.
Our foreign accent helps to get the meaning of what we say.
Exactly. Yes, so welcome, Theophile, to this little room that we are building here. And why are you here? Because this time I called you, I invited you, because you wrote to me with a small comment. Of course, we know each other from some time. It goes back to 2016. I think the International School of Theatre Anthropology in Bergamo, which was a very, very beautiful event. And
5 years exactly.
Yeah, and we met also in different occasions. And firstly, I invited you because you responded to our episode where we talked about Jean-Claude Carriére, and then the second time I know that you're an expert on Antonin Artaud, and this is connecting to what I want somehow to develop in this podcast, to have also some episodes where we rediscover or reread or rediscover, talk about the masters of the past, or people, special artists who shaped maybe the way that theater or maybe cinema or other art forms are made today. No, like, how do you call them? In German we could say Wegbereiter, which way they laid the way, with their thoughts maybe, or with their actions. But
the legacy.
Yeah, so also through misunderstandings maybe, it's also an interesting part. Yes, Antonin Artaud, for some people maybe there rings a bell, of course, the famous theater of cruelty. Maybe, you will tell us later, maybe one of the biggest misunderstandings in theater history. I don't know. You can maybe, this is my point of view.
A lot of misunderstanding. Yeah. And the first misunderstanding comes from you saying, I'm an expert on the subject. If there's one subject where it's hard or maybe impossible to be an expert on, is the subject of Antonin Artaud. You can approach it, you can know about it, you can know well about it, but it's impossible to have a definitive look on it or conviction. We'll talk about that later. Yeah.
So last time in the other episode, I don't remember, I think it was 24, we were speaking about Jean-Claude Carriére, who died some weeks ago. And you wrote to me somehow like saying that he's of course a playwright and also a film
scenarist.
Writer for film, but he's much more, you told me. So what was your impulse to give us this commentary when you heard our episode on Carriére?
I was not surprised you like a figure like Jean-Claude Carriére, and at the same time I was surprised again of his international dimension. When he passed away, I could check on Google and find many articles written in many languages about him, about his trajectory in the art. This man was a multitude of things. He was so inspiring for being able to touch to the theater, to the songwriting. He wrote for singers. He touched the sciences, the spirituality, and different cultures that he frequented very intimately. And this is what it's impressive with him, this ability to make intellectual bridges between distinct fields of thoughts and creations. And of course, you can guess that this kind of person must be very self-centered, egoist, and he was the contrary. He was a man of simplicity, modesty, and humility, open to the other with a big O, and a very fascinating person and very accessible. I would have liked to meet him, of course, but I knew him first by the Sufi poetry, the Persian poetry, the Conference of the Birds.
Yes, which he worked on or he dramatized it or worked with Peter Brook on this play. Now they staged it.
And I was supposed also to perform it years ago, so to read about his work on it helped me a lot. And a man without border, without frontier, and someone you listen to. And this voice, for the English. For the listeners, you can go on YouTube and find some interviews by him in English.
Yes, that's true. You said also in our pre-show when we spoke, you said this is one thing that I want to point out, that he is an encyclopedist, and this is an interesting word that you choose, because it also has a big in your tradition, as a French tradition, France, the word encyclopédie or the encyclopedist is something. It has a big history from the big encyclopedies like Diderot. But when you say this, I think that's exactly what's true. But in a different kind of way. When I thought about encyclopedia, encyclopedist, maybe I'm thinking of people who try to who try to put the phenomenons or the knowledge of the world into some format, into some book, some format where you can discover it by systematically, some systems, systematically A, B, C, D, E, and then everything like this short, and then so this is encyclopedia. but Carriére has some different kind of quality, as you say. He could embrace a lot of knowledges, a lot of fields of knowledge, but not try to flatten them into some kind of European system or something, but to keep everything which he worked on alive and mysterious and playful. So not a closed system of things that you know or that you, but a very open-minded, a very open breathing system of references.
Absolutely. In my opinion, this, what you just said, is the characterization of the true humanism. And on top of that, to adopt sometimes the look of the child. I mean, for instance, let's take from a strawberry or an apple, from a fruit, you can talk about science, about the divine, about the arts, about the history of this fruit, and so the people that discovered this tree. And so from one element, you can always join many other dimensions of the reality, and you can do it in a simple way. You can, and he was a teller. He insisted on that, and he was telling so many conteur, to tell stories. He was a storyteller, and all the stories contribute together to the biggest of all. The history of us, the story of human being. And we need all the little stories to make this big one.
Yes. I think the other word now that you said, humanist or humanism, is an interesting word, and kind of through postmodernism, kind of neglected word. And he somehow embodies, humanism in a sense that is, as I said, not simplifying, but somehow playful open-mindedness. That's very nice. So he's
intellectual,
also curiosity and
intellectual crossover, something very, very free. And it comes from the 18th century here, I think. We can say that. And it has been lost a bit in the intellectual space, as far as I can see. And I think the transition to Antonin Artaud later is already found, because here in France, we are led by the rationalism, and at the same time emerge through history certain figures that are more than just one definition. For instance, like Marije is a tap dancer, but so much more. And we're like much more than only one activity. Because Marije just came back and I could not go on in my speech. I was necessary to say hello.
Yeah, but it's actually just as I was coming back and you were saying this about the humanism and the diversity. I thought it was almost prophetic that I started with this doubt, like, should I call myself one thing or embrace the many aspects that... So there it was already kind of present. And I also very much love this... there is something lost in this insistence on unifying everything and on finding like this unified theory, the grand theory, that seems to be the path we chose from enlightenment, the path that we got, and the path of diversity, and the many little stories that you need to tell the big story. That's wonderfully said, Theo. Is one that I think we must rediscover. The truth in diversity, and the truth in all these different perspectives and different sides, even within ourselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he can help us. We should, if you have the chance, go on YouTube and look at things of Jean-Claude Carriére. Look at the films that he made. There is one, I like him also very much as an actor, and there is one very nice role that he has in Louis Buñuel's Diary of the Chambermaid with Jeanne Moreau, and he has the role of a priest. I think it was his favorite roles to perform priests or something, and he has a very, very incredible scene where so there is a chambermaid, and in this house where she works, there is a husband and a wife, and the husband is unable to have sex with her. Yeah, and the wife is unable to have sex with him. I don't know. And the wife, asks the priest, played by Jean-Claude Carriére. It is a film from the 60s, no, so black and white. And she asks him, Jean-Claude Carriére as priest, is there other possibilities that I can maybe please with words around? Is there other possibilities to make love, let's say, than just the penetration? I would translate. And Jean-Claude Carriére as priest says, "Oh no! What are you talking about? That's no." So. His role is so great. It's a great film. You should see it. Okay.
We'll definitely see it.
Diary of the Chambermaid, and all the films by Buñuel, and Okay. I have a very, very great book by Jean-Claude Carriére, which I am reading now again, and it's called The Circle of Liars. I already quoted it last time. It's a book of philosophical stories of all the world. I think it's not available in English. I'm happy that it's in German, and in French it will be there too. And maybe in the end of the podcast I will tell a story of that, if we are not too tired. So, now to our big, it's a biggie, as Marije would say. It's a biggie. But you made a very nice transition, so maybe Theophile, you can just start. If you make this transition again from Carriére to Artaud, we had the rationality of France, and then these figures that appeared. But and also then, how did you? Because I met you, and you always had a very strong interest, curiosity, and a strong work with Artaud. You made conferences about him. You also visited and worked with the archive or with the museum Artaud in Rodez. And we met there. Rodez is a city in France where he lived in the psychiatry. But you can tell it. So your relation to Artaud, how did you discover him? How was your approach to him? Maybe we can start with that and dive into the topic. Or should I now play this little introduction, this little thing that you sent to me?
That's a good idea.
Okay, so Theophile sent me some clips, and now we will hear, I think it's your voice, Theophile, and we will hear this from a short introduction to your conference.
Considered among the most influential figures in the evolution of modern drama theory, Antonin Artaud inspired generations of artists and thinkers. 70 years after his death, his life and work continues to generate passion, debate, controversies. Its impact had the effect of an earthquake in many countries and cultures. At a time when his work falls into the public domain, our conference today is a unique opportunity to observe a panorama of artistic creations and intellectual productions which, from the 60s until today, have each in their own way manifested the thought and legacy of Artaud. If we want to understand the importance and relevance of the contribution of Artaud, it's necessary to consider the myriad underground networks where his work is constantly taking place: performing arts, visual arts, philosophy, psychiatry. His powerful contribution is multidisciplinary and speaks directly to us of our era and the conflicts that cross it: political, aesthetic, cultural, identities. What then is radical in art? What is the true subversion? How to realize his theater of cruelty that aims to shock audiences through gesture, image, sound and light? Artaud's unconventional work forces us to think about these questions. He had a lucid vision of the theater's relevance, and he tirelessly searched for the authentic freedom in life. This conference is an introduction to a vision that has changed the history of art.
I will just say something brief, that this is so theater of cruelty, radical. These words that come to my mind. My director told me recently, I miss in today's, in what we do, and also what we did maybe in the online stuff that we did. He said to me, I miss the theater of cruelty. There, this is one thing. Why? Now, what does this mean? And the other thing which I told you before, maybe it was one of the most misunderstood concepts. I don't know, but now I give the word to you, Théophile.
Yeah, thank you. There are plenty of questions, and this presentation aims to embrace important aspects of the work and life of Artaud, and this is not a time for a conference now, but it would be. Is it clear that Artaud, yes, was a figure of the modern theater? Yeah, he was born at the end of the 19th century and died in 1948. And he was responsible for an important revolution in the conception of stage performances. Not only theater, but he is also important for dancers and performers of all kinds. And I'll start with the beginning. I met Artaud when I was 18 years old at the Theater Academy here. And I was immediately hypnotized by the myth around the character, around the figure of Artaud. There is something really unusual with this author. To read Artaud is a very important experience in a reader's life, something you don't experience so often. He really belongs to the type of writer that makes you see your own experience of living in a different way. And I know we can say that for many of great authors, and we are right to think of it. But Artaud drives you to something of the absolute of being. What is to be, to live this life? So it's a difficult reading because it's not only philosophical, but he starts from his own personality, his own life to make his work. And so I met him in the context of the theater, and I was immediately shocked by this life and destiny in the art. He suffered all his life. He had a painful existence, and I was attracted by. It's funny because today Marije wrote me a comment that I look like Artaud on some pictures, and I was laughing because of course it's not my opinion, but also I never identified with him, and it's impossible to desire a transfer of personality from Artaud to you, because he really he suffered all his life, and you really don't want to be like him, but he is a writer that helps you to consider so many aspects of life. But first of all, reading Artaud and discovering this world, you start a reflection about how life is tragical, how life is shit. That's what you can think reading the first lines of Artaud. And I saw his face, I saw his eyes, the way he stares at you on these old photographies. Something happened. I cannot really explain why, and I cannot really explain why I had this long time activity around this walk, around this figure. I think it helps me to understand myself, to auto-observe myself, also as an actor. Not only on the philosophical level, but concerning what is said about what an actor must do or must not do. I feel inspired by him, and at the same time I observe, I consider all the distance between him and my own path in life and in the art. And you, have you heard about Artaud before?
Marije, maybe you want to say something first. What are you showing? No, I can also.
I'm still showing the book. I have here a book with some writings of him, and it was thrust into my hand when I started to go into theater and came to the Odin and met people who were shocked that I had not read Artaud. And so it was put in my hand.
It's so shocking.
It was actually shocking, and I'm very glad that they did. It's interesting to me, these shaking books, as you describe, that it must be very different. At what point in your life do you read this text for the first time? Because it falls when you are young and forming your craft. It falls, I think, into a very specific place, the place where it sets you on. It kind of opens up what this can become, what this can be, what you can be, what you could aspire to, or what you would like to fight for, to struggle for, and gives a sense also to your struggle and to the hard work and to the it justifies in a way this track that you sense. And to me, reading it in my 40s and as someone who has already for 25 years struggled with very different things, carrying that struggle, I think it was a bit more difficult for me to really enter into the text. I leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much.
For me, of course, as an actor of we I think the last time in our network episode we started employing the third theater more. So as an actor in the third theater, in the independent theater, I think Artaud is a very important point of reference, but a very ambiguous one also. I also did not read a lot of text by him. I did not read a lot of Artaud, and it's interesting that you point out read Artaud. So this is the thing that we have, of course, like other what we have of Artaud is basically texts, and there is also some recordings of voice that we will maybe listen to later, and there is also one film, I think at least one film where he acts, which is the Jeanne d'Arc by Dreyer. So there he has a very powerful role, a very young Artaud, and a very interesting gaze and stare at the camera. One of the old mute movies. Silent movies. Joan of Arc. But I got to know Artaud through Grotowski. Because the first time that I knew from Artaud, of course, I know Artaud and the theater and the plague. No, the theater and the plague, theater of cruelty. All these words are connected to Artaud. But I first heard more about him through Grotowski in the Towards the Poor Theater, also important book for theater artists, especially independent ones. Grotowski writes an article about Artaud called "He Wasn't Entirely Himself," and I cannot really quote this article because it's a long time ago that I read it. But what is the notion that I take from this is that Artaud was like other people, different, but other, let's say, compared to other theater visionaries like Gordon Craig, maybe, somehow in this sphere of the in the beginning of the 20th century, where these figures appeared and revolutionized theater. No, they revolutionized theater, and they came. So Artaud came to this writing and also thinking and envisioning, but he had never has got the chance to realize his visions. That's what I don't know if that's my my understanding. So he never
it's true.
He never had the, let's say, the theater studio like Stanislavski, who worked until he was old, and then he made the studies on with the, after the famous Moscow art theater. Then he made the closed study, and worked on his physical action, Stanislavski. But Artaud never had the opportunity to realize his ideals of theater. So his struggle is a tragic one, and he somehow spits on fire and spits on this, what maybe Brecht would call culinary theater, culinary art scene in this, and has some vision of what Grotowski maybe would call for himself a total actor or a total act. But he would write and would have conferences and would go to Mexico and whatever, and could not realize. So he is a visionary without any practical help for us. We read his text, but we cannot take any method. I mean, there is no method, but we cannot take exercises or method. It's like a point of reference, like a mountain that was never put into action. I think this is important too. That's why I say that afterwards, theater of cruelty, what does it mean? It, for instance, inspired the living theater very much, as we saw also these pictures in what we heard before. But theater of cruelty can also, like Grotowski did, provoke misunderstandings and terrible, as you would say, people who try to not copy, because but people who try to maybe
revindicate
or do the same, take it to the understand it literally, or try to apply whatever, and then comes out maybe actors screaming on stage, getting naked, and there's absolutely nothing happening. Now this is not theater of cruelty. So there's a lot of things that we can rediscover, and that we can also we can struggle with.
Grind.
Struggle with. Yeah.
In German we say
there are many things.
Grind.
No, thank you. There are many things in what you say. I remember you talked about the ambiguity, and that it's very ambiguous figure, and ambiguous to talk about it also. And you said is pitted on that. I have the feeling is pitted on the future and us too, so that he said in a way, after me, no-ness, after me, nothing, and that's why I find myself and all the people that talks about Artaud in a difficult position, not only because it's very a very strong universe. I often say it's like talking about Maria Callas, you know, it's something so beautiful, and it's not only beautiful, but it's a personal relation you get with the artist, with the voice, with this world, and you don't want to share your love for Maria Callas and opera with others. It's an experience of solitude. Reading Artaud concerns yourself first, and it's hard to have a social moment around who he was and what he said, and he was the first responsible for that, for the life he had, for the fact he never created a method. And the theater of cruelty is poetically written in the book The Theater and Its Double. And Artaud uses a language that stimulates our imagination, our capacity of vision. But of course, he never recommends exactly a certain type of exercise. So there is, it's an anomalia in the history of acting method and theater figures. But he remains central in the history of contemporary theater and performance art. This is the enigma. How someone who never really wrote a method or a movement of theater, because the theater of cruelty never existed as a movement, but how, in spite of this phenomenon of auto-negation, exists many filiations, many flows of theater that came in with the consequence of the reading of Artaud. This is an open question, and of course we can quote so many artists, and the history of theater laboratory comes from Artaud in a way, because it takes place in this filiation, body art, living theater. I could continue like that, yeah.
You know, Theo, maybe actually, if you turn around the despite, you have, maybe there is a beginning of an answer there, that, you know, it's exactly because he did not become concrete. He did not create a method or a technique or say you have to do this exercise, but he stayed on the visionary level, that again and again people can be inspired by his power to break through the walls that of convention, that it stays powerful. This is exact, not despite, but because of that essence of his. He never, you know, when someone creates a method, it almost invites the argument or the next method. And it's a very a beautiful gift, actually, not to do that, and it almost invites us when we speak of these ideas, as you already mentioned. You speak more of this moment of your intimate relation. You begin to speak of yourself, and this is a really great power of this work, I think. That when you speak of Artaud, you speak of you. Where did it bring you? And this is a very interesting aspect.
Yeah. This is the question, of course, of what is the relevance of Artaud today for you, and maybe also for us. But before, I want to point out that now we have a false dichotomy, which is, of course, not Artaud, visionary, and the other thing, creating methods. Of course, we're not talking. This is not the only
creating.
What I was saying is that he did not realize his vision in the form of performance. Maybe he did it himself in his famous Theater and the Plague conference at the Sorbonne, but we don't know, because we only have the witness of Anaïs Nin, who wrote about it, but maybe it was just a very banal act and people were just leaving, and he was just a poor, miserable guy on stage and nobody listening to him. So we don't know if it had this big impact. And this is so he could not realize his visions. And the other thing is not creating a method, because this is afterwards. Grotowski was influenced, of course, by this. Although I think he says that he discovered very late these texts,
which is true.
Yeah, but Grotowski realized the kind of he worked and he put something into reality, which people in that time could see. This also creates misunderstandings and fake methods and everything, but these are people who realize. Artaud did not realize, and this is also the danger to take it as a as we say, as a recipe or as a method or as anything. So what is? Why should we look at Artaud today? What is the relevance for you? No.
But the relevance for me is not necessarily the relevance for another. Maybe the contrary. Maybe something very different. For instance, what's interesting with me, I think, is that I'm not the most radical theater artist. I am classically trained, and
you're a comédien.
Like you have, comédien, and you have the classical dancer, the classical musician. I'm a classical actor, and I come from this system here with the celebration of text and everything around the play and the text and literature, and of course Artaud went against that, not totally against the text, but against the domination of the text on the environment, the whole environment of the theater. And it was for the resurgence of body expression at the time when it was, of course, absent on stage. And for myself, I think a lot about the voice, what Artaud said about voice effect, and not for our first the voice and then the places, the question of places and for theater and art. But first the voice, to not use the voice as for its literal use of conveying the sense and conveying the meanings of a text, but to explore this voice as a fantastic material everyone has. Yours is unique, mine is unique, and it's a pure expression of my person. And as an actor, I have to be able to use it in a very different way, including speaking with the spoken words. And the question of place is interesting because in my case, I decided years ago. I got professionalized as an actor, going in apartments, in art galleries, later in churches, in convents, on boats, on many places that are not officially dedicated to theater, in the streets. And Artaud insisted a lot on that the question of a living culture is not a question of going from one place to another, from the museum to the library, from the library to the cinema or the theater. But the question is more about going out places to reinvent a natural relation between human and culture, to refine the roots of culture, the deepest roots, and to form cycles. Of course, Artaud celebrated a sacred theater, an idea of a ceremony that helps us to live a magical moment. There is Brecht, politic, and Artaud, magic. This is also very interesting. They exist as two faces of a constellation, intellectual constellation in the theater.
Yeah.
And the relevance today, I could continue with my answer, but
we will come to that.
To give yours.
Go, Theo.
I will. You can go, and I will just interject. What is the theater of cruelty? What does it mean, actually, for you, of course?
Yeah, but for Artaud first, theater. The word cruelty can be understood, and has to be understood in more than one meaning. Of course, not only bloody, not only violent or brutal, but also a raw theater, a theater of necessity. what happens on stage has to be a question of life and death. It can be something very soft. It can be just one finger moved in space, but it has to find its meaning at a very deep level inside you. Also, hungriness, this need for theater and this need for expression. So all the artificial elements are avoided and eliminated. This inspired the next avant-garde of the 60s. Grotowski included. So come back to the body, a big comeback to the body, and the cruelty as, of course, to shake people. We're talking about a time when they never seen what we have seen. Of course, we've seen everything today. We're bored. We're blasé, as we say in French. We came back from everything, naked body on stage. I mean, how to be shocked? It's impossible to be shocked today because all the elements, all the laws and the borders have been distracted some. But concerning Artaud, we're talking about the 30s, the 40s in Paris, and we're in a society where everything, especially in the theater, responds to very strict rules of expression, and so the simple fact that at this time the street theater didn't exist like it exists today. So I'm a bit lost now in my episode. So. Well, I'll refine what I wanted to say.
And now what?
Cruelty. What I answered about cruelty, I spoke a lot about it.
And now what it means to you? What impact did it have on you? This. Did it change you?
I relate.
Did it change you?
Yeah. I relate to it in. This necessity. I really, after reading Artaud, I allowed myself to come alone with a poem on stage or in front of an audience. Very simple dispositive, very simple way to make theater, but I erased a lot of things that I believed essential. So I made this act of washing my own theater, or my dream of theater. I had a vision that was really sophisticated, and Artaud came to really be a reference of. I mean, this rigor. Okay, another sense of cruelty is rigor. And I wanted to find how to be. What is the nobleness in acting, in being an actor? I want my profession to be a craft, and then came the meeting of Odin and this sphere, which inspired me a lot because it's made of strong values, rigorous values. Of course, cruelty means discipline, but it's Artaud. We don't have to understand that in a military way. There is also a generosity that goes with it. Yeah.
That is why I think this concept can actually leaving behind the misunderstandings of theater of cruelty being brutal, blah 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 blah, whatever. No, it can help. It can help us still today to find this. And
yeah. But I used to say the theater remains cruel by itself today, because if you think about it, it's the only place where you have to switch off your phone, your smartphone. Where all in the other places, even the hospital, the hospital people keep their smartphones on. So it is. But you know what? I think it's very cruel. It's cruel to private the audience of what became a natural gesture you do every minute, and so we can refine some way to have power on the audience. But I don't like to say that because I don't walk with this idea of taking power on the audience.
Yeah. What I found interesting, I think Brecht and Artaud have the same enemy. That is what Brecht talks about when he says when he was young, the culinary theater, the culinary art scene. Of course, I don't mean, what he means is not the carefully prepared meal where you invite your friends and you really get nurtured, but this you remember André of Futur 3 talking about this art gallery vernissage where you have your little and then you talk about the art.
I've listened to him.
Yeah, and then you have your little salmon cookie and you talk about the paintings, and so I think this is the same enemy for. It's sometimes good to understand what is the enemy of that, what we are looking at. What is he going against? And Brecht also went against that. So also, this enemy is the theater which is somehow integrated into the other industrial cultural industry. That is, without the seamless integrated in the cultural industry, you have the market, you have the Netflix, and you have the Spotify, and you have the podcasts, and you have the theaters, and you have the big theater, and there is some avant-garde, and there is the third theater. Ah, great! Now tonight I'm going for third theater, and tomorrow I'm on Netflix, and this kind of market of art, of culinary art, I think is the enemy for these, for Artaud, for Brecht, for Grotowski, and for it should be our enemy too. Although we need to be smart and of course earn money, so get also inside of the market. But
they lived in a completely different world than ours. Completely different. If if television was operating in their time like it's operating today, if the platforms, it's impossible to compare. Theater was a central activity in social life at the time. It was and the discussion about aesthetic and beauty in the intellectual area already existed concretely in determined places in the big cities. And so therefore their fights cannot take place anymore in the same terms today. It's impossible.
So how do you explain or how do you see, Theo, that this idea that was born in this very different time still speaks so loud to contemporary people who live in so different? What is it?
There's something very funny with Artaud. It's to know that he was the first inventor of the concept of virtual reality. The expression virtual reality is first present in Artaud's writing. I don't remember exactly where. Maybe in the theater it's about. Yeah. Theater was the virtual reality. The stage frame was the space of another world, another a fictionalized world that can make our existence better or bigger or something else for a moment, for a while. So Artaud at the same time had a vision for theater. So to embody a new, a virtual reality, and he was against the alienation of new technologies. For him at the time, it was already a kind of alienation to use a phone for a conversation, a call, because you don't see the person, you're at the phone. So you hold an object in your hand, and there's also already something sacrilege, something blaspheme in a way for his dogma, his ideology. Yeah. And so you can imagine what he would say about today's habits. So the idea that if you don't re-establish a direct human contact, you are somehow alienated and you cannot develop your being. What's interesting and relevant today in reading Artaud or reading about him, because so many books have been written about him, is the question of the identity. Everybody seeks for discovering who who he is, and the question of reinventing ourselves. And the question of identity is central in all Artaud's theater of his own body, because his theater, after all, was a theater of his own body, because the question of identity for him is related to the diseases he suffered from, the health problems he had, the mental health problem he had. He was not able to really possess all his resources, his physical resources and mental resources. It was always a fight. So the question of identity today is mostly considered in the general global debates as a political question. And reading Artaud drives you to a more metaphysical and chemical area of thinking. That this coming back to the body is not only a political issue, it's Artaud talks about the organs, this body without organ. So this is another concept, and I will not spend time on it because it's far more difficult than speaking about the theater of cruelty.
It's interesting though, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting because Artaud speaks to us about this need we have of identity and to be rebel against the society and its institutions that private us from our own natural freedom. We come to this world, we receive a name, we receive this body, this envelope, and we don't know what to do with. It's the original injustice, unfair. And then comes the religion, the school, the army, the rights. And so many things one can find in Artaud to reflect on all these aspects of life.
It's really interesting. Actually, now that you say this body without organs, I just remember how big of an impact he had on Deleuze and Guattari. And that whole area that just explodes into very revolutionary thinking. So, in a way, Simon, I have to say, I don't give a shit that he never made a theater piece. I don't think it matters. I really think, so what? He wrote text that poetically and intellectually is still shifting people's lives. And
during his lifetime, it was the own manifesto of.
Yeah. And I really think in this moment, I've heard this before from theater people, that they say, yeah, but he did not really know, he did not test his theories, he did not realize anything. But I think he realized a thought, which is a powerful act. And as the English so very nicely say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and in this case, the eating is thinking.
And that's yeah. But you can, this is, of course, you can say, yeah. Of course, the text is the pudding. If you say the text is the pudding, then I say the text is not the pudding. The pudding is not the text.
He made a great pudding. No, but
he made a great.
But the fact
recipe, great description of the pudding.
No,
it's not the pudding.
I don't think
a great description.
I don't think so. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because his thought.
We cannot eat it. We can only read about it. We cannot eat the pudding.
Well, okay, this is another podcast. I dare you. We're going to make a podcast on this. I think it's fascinating because...
I'd like to talk about... Let me tell you one thing. Artaud would have been passionate in the making...
Please reconcile.
No, because Artaud would have been fascinated in making a podcast. Truly, believe me. And he started a project that has been censored later, but what we have today is this recording he made at the end of his life, at the time when TV, cinema, internet, of course, was not operational, but radio was the medium at the time, with only one or two channel, I think. At least in France, it was really, a mono channel. And Artaud made a radio performance that became really famous, and even before its launch, before it went out, for its shocking tone, saying very political considerations about the situation in the world, and mixing his voice, we'll listen now, with his poetry in a very unique way, and listen to that, Marije, and you comment good. After what you think about it.
So we have this here, Antonin Artaud, J'ai appris hier. This is the radio?
Yeah. The radio, and the title of this program is To Give an End to God's Judgment.
And what are we listening? We are going to listen to Artaud's voice.
We're listening to Artaud's voice at the beginning of this speech when he came to the radio, and well, that's it.
J'ai appris hier. Il faut croire que je retarde. Ou peut-être n'est-ce qu'un faux bruit, l'un de ces sales ragots, comme ils sont colportes entre évier et latrine, à l'heure de la mise au baquet des repas, une fois de plus ingurgités. J'ai appris hier l'une des pratiques officielles les plus sensationnelles des écoles publiques américaines, et qui font sans doute que ce pays se croit à la tête du progrès. Il paraît que parmi les examens ou épreuves que l'on fait subir à un enfant qui entre pour la première fois dans une école publique, aurait lieu l'épreuve dite de la liqueur séminale ou du sperme, et qui consisterait à demander à cet enfant nouvel entrant un peu.
What's your reaction? You're laughing.
It's I love it. I love it. And oh my God.
He is saying complotist theory.
Aha.
What theory?
Is it like science fiction? Is he doing or is he serious about it? Is he like really, or is he making a narrative?
This is the beginning of his speech. It's hard to give, to sum it up, to resume it. But he starts by saying, did you know about what they do in USA recently? They come to schools and they collect sperm from the children, from the young boys. And from this... So that's why I said it's complotist, because in my mind, I was associating this speech with what some bullshit we can hear today. Or so Artaud.
You mean conspiracy theorists? You mean like conspiracy theorists?
Yeah. Yeah, in France, we speak about complot.
Complot.
So Artaud starts with something totally shocking, and you can imagine saying that on the radio at this time, and starting with that, it's not even hidden in the speech. It's the first idea, but then after he'll make statements about what is about life, about his own experience of life, and but there is this taste for provocation you cannot avoid with him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think for me it's a lot this taste for provocation, this cruelty. You know, last time we were speaking about being too nice to each other. So this sense of that we can provoke, that we are also, because today theater is like it's good for people, it's good for society. It's you engage your creativity with theater. Theater is good for children, for adults, for seniors, but in this figure like Artaud, we see no, theater is actually bad. It's like a disease. It shakes you. It can shake you. It is not integrated into the society. It's outside of society. It's outcast. It's not part. And this notion, I miss in this world where we could say capitalism takes everything and puts it. Now, you in one podcast you said, Marije, it takes everything and turns it into beer because it can be a commercial for. No, we can turn everything into the. So this is. I hear this in his voice.
Absolutely, and I was just reading today the wonderful book Alchemists of the Stage by Mirella Schino. Very, very interesting to read it at this point. And in the end, she describes the so-called Red Queen race. She describes the studios of the beginning of the 20th century, which were part of the big institutions but separated, and they were had this task of always nipping at the heels of this big institutions to keep them awake, to shake them, and they were out, as you say, Simon, they were outcast in the woods or somewhere, so they could be free to do that, and this was very consciously set up this way. It was kind of the whole function of these studios was to nip and to bother and to provoke and actually that made me think of the theater in its double, this beautiful title where Eugenio Barba he was in one of his wonderful speeches, he said with his passionate voice, and then there is Artaud, this man that proposes that the theater is the reality, and what we see as reality is a shadow, is double, and what actually matters happens in this theater space, which is, I think, related to this function of provoking, of being able to move different than the constraints of culture and the constraints of society. And there it actually brings me, Theo, to this, his voice is such a good example, and maybe why it still resonates so strong. And it just reminds me of a whole tradition of thinkers that have been kind of bothered by how to get out of culture when it starts to petrify, how to keep your freedom of movement, your freedom to transform, to learn, to evolve ourselves, yourself. Mm-hmm. And you need to find ways out. What is very obvious now, why Deleuze and Guattari were so taken with this body without organs. It's these lines of flight, this escape, the possibility for that. And I was just thinking of this other, and this is maybe a bit, that would he be, and this is a question to you, Theo, because you would know.
Well, I am the oracle.
I think. Would he be, you think, be in the same tradition as, who was he again, the French writer, philosopher in this 18th century that was so obsessed with nature and pedagogies in nature?
Rousseau.
Emile, I think. Rousseau. Do you think there's any? And Rimbaud, and these like Rimbaud, that try to escape through craziness, through going they explode out of the straitjacket. Is there, you think, a tradition in France?
But it's. Thank you for what you said, because just after you propose what you said, I mean, your understanding of Artaud and the the relation between what he wrote and the theater, your understanding is very high level, Marije. And you started
I'm just
by
a tap
saying
dancer, you know.
of course not, but you're touched by his philosophy, by his weight, by his vision, and this is moving also for me to hear you speaking in such a way. Thank you. And so it's interesting also from your perspective to associate Artaud with Rousseau. I think nobody did it before you, and it's very interesting because yes, Rousseau was maybe maybe not the first
points for Marije for having a new. You can now write your own thesis. Make another footnote to Plato's philosophy.
Yeah. Montaigne was already attracted by nature and wrote a lot about nature, but the correct the direct association goes with Rimbaud, definitely, because it has to see with the question of feelings, the sensations, body feelings, and the need to deregulate, destructure.
But wasn't Rousseau even precursor of that particular thing? You know, very taken with the emotions, the humor, the.
I would
senses.
Not be able to say.
Raya, be careful!
Rousseau...
You're now playing with your Sorbonne points. Don't go more into speculations.
No, but okay, I will just I'm going to Wikipedia now. I will confess.
No, but I'm giving all the points of my master degree at the Sorbonne to you right now because I cannot speak a lot about Rousseau. I should have read before our conversation Les Confessions de Rousseau. But
he drove those rationalists crazy. He was their nightmare. I think
they wanted to be alone. You know, Rousseau was the first to claim this need for solitude in the elements, to shape a new something, a new thinking, a new vision.
Yeah, let's stick to Rimbaud better.
Okay.
Rimbaud is a flying star. Rimbaud was a flying star.
Yeah.
In the sky of poetry, and Artaud began his connection with poetry being a reader of Rimbaud, of course, and this association goes. I finish with that. It's language, how to destroy language to reinvent it.
Yeah.
A body and a language, destroyed, and reinvented. Yeah. Now silence. We went to very deep dimensions of thinking.
We have to come out of it.
And I wanted...
Yeah, Théophile.
I just want to precise something about my own place of thinking. I never wrote a book about Artaud. I really claim my subjectivity on those subjects. I really want to say because I think it's a fair place of speech, because Artaud always refers to your own subjectivity, not necessarily to concepts. It's interesting to talk about concept, but it's much more interesting in the case of Artaud, because he was a poet, and for many other reasons, to admit your own subjectivity, your own. So I don't hide myself behind an etiquette.
Well,
and I don't want. Theo, I could have written a thesis, but I didn't want.
That's great.
Good.
Actually,
I really encourage people not to write.
Yeah, no.
That's wonderful.
Some dimensions of thinking should not be stuck in the context of the university, or not only in the context of the university. It's not always necessary. Yeah.
Well, that's very dear to my heart, because I think writing from this practice point that is very subjective. That is your lived experience, entangled with your techniques, entangled with your colleagues, with your genealogy, those that influenced you, that guided you even through writing. That speaking from that position as you speak now, I think is one of the little stories that build our big story, what you said in the beginning. And if we don't do that, and actually I was also reading Hannah Arendt this week, and she said very, very strong, when you cut that line between your words and your lived experience, you're opening yourself up to a total loss of responsibility.
Yes.
And this is where she sees a lot of evil that is not anymore because someone wants to do bad, right? It's because we are cutting these lines. So I very much applaud that position of speaking, and we should understand how to do that in a way that doesn't become self-indulgent. That there is a rigor there.
Yeah, that's a very good.
But it's also because I want to stay an actor and I want to come on stage with some text of Artaud I perform, and then comes the conference. Of course, the word conference exists in our minds as something very precise, very scholar, and I don't like it, but it's the best I've found because I'm here when I go on stage. Last time I did it in English was in Oslo in Norway, and I had to present the life and all the dimensions of his work, like I just did tonight, and it was a kind of conference tonight with you as co-conferencers, which was really really precious. Conférencier, voilà, orateur, orators.
You can take the notion of conference from the Conference of the Birds by Artaud, so that's a nice.
Nice transition.
There is one clip left. Do we have to? Should we? Is there something more? Can we listen to that? What is that?
I have a burning question for Theo,
of course, just say that we are slowly approaching to the end, and we make the last questions and words, and of course. But there is a clip, or should we have the burning question first? I don't know. There is no.
If it's really burning, Marije.
First, no. I will keep. It's been there since the very first moment, so I can hold it a little longer. Okay, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, there's one thing, Simon, that maybe before we listen to the clip, I just wish to respond a little to your remark of you missing this cruelty, this aspect of the cruel, and I think this is maybe also another aspect of our search for the body and our search for this, what is really necessary and what is true, that somehow art has, or some part of the art has gained this aspect of always having to be critical on, having a point to make, being clever, spotting things, making critique on society or on things that are not right. And it's become quite tiresome at some points, and quite conceptual, and quite much that if you understand my point, then you got the art. And if I don't have a point, I cannot make critical art. And I think we are, or many are looking for ways how this critical can be understood different, and this cruel can be found again now in our circumstance. Then and it might mean something different than the way it has appeared maybe 40, 50 years ago. Yeah, that's
in the theater class, in the theater making, the what we call the politically correct also invaded the relationships, the relation between artists. To be open to controversies, to make yourself open to another opinion, requires a certain spirit, and it's something you learn, I think. Learn that others will have another opinion on your production, and well, maybe it's another subject you were.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's slightly other subject. I think this has something to do with, the unapologetic, directness of the act, or what is an act, even what is an action. It also boils a bit down on that question, maybe this necessity and the urgency, and I think we've seen so much also after this whole 60s explosion and the naked people on the stage and the raging, crying, tampon swinging, self-mutilating artists that have been on stage, that it's almost a sense of that's not where it is anymore. That is, we have to look at another rigor, and one that may be, because one thing that we need to resist is actually our fragmentation and our isolation into little consuming nuggets, that spend their money where they should, and don't voice any protest or make any real connections. Or
I'd like to quote just one example of what I found, maybe related to a form of cruelty. What I found recently in my life is on the internet, the concept of the ASMR with the voice. Have you heard about that? So you whisper using very modern microphone. And do it, Simon, do it.
Yeah. So, hello to this podcast. I welcome you tonight.
And then they do.
What I want to say is that people are divided into two categories. The one that love it and the other part hated. And these people, I don't know if, the ASMR came because you don't hear the screams when it screams everywhere. So let's go back to the whisper as a form of going directly to the spectator, the auditor, the listener. I don't have any other opinion about that. It's just that I found this invention something different, something, a twist.
Yeah. Yeah, very good point. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
But when they want to relax you, because the majority of the ASMR video, it's for Zen objective for me.
What?
Actually, to say... to get relaxed and to sleep.
To sleep. To sleep.
This video, they're meant to, okay, let's sleep with me. And the contrary happens with me.
In theater, of course, we should do then there is one Pink Floyd album, Umaguma, and there is one track on that where it slows down, it gets very quiet, very quiet, very quiet. And then suddenly, and I'm always terrified by this moment. So this is, of course, then you have to surprise
again and again and again.
Yeah, I'm always terrified, but because I don't know why. It's great.
All right.
And to finish with that, I think the world of sound is much more promising than the world of the image. It's just an intuition, but we are oversaturated by images. We should wash our eyes with the Javel water to see something more now, because we're too attacked by images. And sound remains potentially revolutionary for the next years.
Well,
the radio.
A lot has been done with a lot of the really radical experiment have been also in music. And in sound, and it's there, and it's incredibly transformative. But I think, honestly, for myself, I think it's very much in the interdisciplinarity, even though it seems like a word that has lost its power. But I think we're only starting at the beginning of truly allowing the world of sound to be very present, not subservient to a narrative or to the visual aspect, but and it is in a way, if you turn down the sound of any film or series that you're watching, it just disappears. But we are not so aware of its primacy.
There is a German podcaster who was also in the podcast scene in Germany, who has made the way because he was a very early podcaster, independent podcaster. So there is this. We are, as a podcast, we are part of the independent podcast scene. We are also available on Spotify, but we are not Spotify only and this kind of thing. No, we are working with open source software, and I deeply rely on the efforts of the podcast community, especially in Germany. And one of these guys, Tim Pritlove, he's called, and he is also very active on this Clubhouse thing to speak to people, to speak with his listeners. He has a very interesting podcast, and then I saw recently that he made this kind of Clubhouse audio conference invitation, which was called The World of the Blind. So he wanted to invite blind people and wanted to speak with them to understand what is their world, what does their world look like, what is it. So I think that if we also talk about inclusion or diversity, I think there is for instance there is no theater for the blind. No, there is this all the sound. I imagine how it is to be a blind person in this world, and all is only images, not only for the beside radio, no, but
you could go to concerts.
But there is a
concert.
So there is a big. I don't know how many, but there is a population, people that are also now connected and can voice their things, or audience that would only consume or only listen to audio things. So there is, I don't know why this is intriguing me to maybe one should do theater in this way also. I don't know.
It's called radio play.
It's called radio play.
But you could do it live. Maybe that could.
Maybe the radio play is not live.
Let's go for it. Let's do it.
Let's
do it.
We just need a. That's an idea.
Audience, blind audience.
We should please. We should trademark this idea directly and have a patent. No.
Actually, there was a couple of performances in Holland where they blindfolded the audience, and then tortured them with soft and fluffy things.
Another thing is to if you prepare a piece, prepare a film, prepare a piece, something. It's always good to close your eyes and listen to the material, to have the other sense.
Yes, exactly.
To have the other sense of. To avoid, like we said in the beginning, Artaud was against these meaning-carrying voice, for instance. We just carries the meaning and the text, and so no, it has more parameters. The voice is sound and rhythm, and the theater play is also images and text and body moving, but it's also sound and rhythm, and sometimes you can discover that your performance lacks something. You close your eyes and you listen and you hear, no, there is no rhythm, or the rhythm is not. There has to be something more in the sound has to appear. No, you have to be more conscious that you go on stage and your steps are part of the sound, are part of the rhythm. So I think
that's a ridiculous idea, said the tap dancer.
And I think this Artaud also
voice of the feet.
Yeah, the voice of the feet. So we came back to this.
It's Barba also, no?
Yes.
It's Barba's famous 5 spectators sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
A blind one, a deaf one. What is it? A kid, and then someone who knows everything.
Yeah.
And then, what is the 5th one? Is it every man?
I don't know.
Or is it himself? I think
Maybe
it's himself. I think he put himself in the audience.
Or like
Critical,
what we heard before.
frowning.
What we heard before, Jean-Claude Carriére, together with Louis Buñuel, that had the Monsieur and Madame, this typical French couple who would sit there, imaginary couple that would listen to their working on the script and saying, "Oh, I don't understand this. I don't like this. This is too absurd, too abstract. I don't know." Yeah, yeah. It's good. It's good to look at your work under different. Not only in this meaning sense, not only in in one sense, but in different. So then you can create a dense work, no? A dense work of art.
Yeah, that's exactly
multidimensional.
What the interdisciplinarity, I think, can really bring us. But let's go to the clip.
So let's come back to Artaud himself.
Exactly.
I wanted to choose for you guys what can be emblematic in the first writings of Artaud, where he developed certain master ideas he will follow later in his production. So we are with a text written in 1924, so almost 1 century ago, and it's called Umbilical of Limbo. So the umbilical, I don't know how to say it in English, I'm sorry. Umbilique des limbes. And the limbos are this dimension where everything is forgot. And so just forget what I said. You listen to the uncompromising voice of Artaud through my voice. In French first, then in English.
Là où d'autres proposent des œuvres, je ne prétends pas autre chose que de montrer mon esprit. La vie est de brûler des questions. Je ne conçois pas d'œuvre comme détachée de la vie. Je n'aime pas la création détachée. Je ne conçois pas non plus l'esprit comme détaché de lui-même. Chacune de mes œuvres, chacun des plans de moi-même, chacune des floraisons glaciaires de mon âme intérieure bave sur moi. Where others present their works, I claim to do no more than show my mind. Life consists of burning up questions. I cannot conceive of work that is detached from life. I do not like detached creation. Neither can I conceive of the mind as detached from itself. Each of my works, each diagram of myself, each glacial flowering of my inmost soul dribbles over me. I am as much myself in a letter written to explain the inner contraction of my being and the senseless castration of my life, as in an essay which is external to myself and which appears to me as an indifferent pregnancy of my mind. I suffer because the mind is not in life, and life is not the mind. I suffer from the mind as organ, the mind as interpreter, the mind as intimidator of things to force them to enter the mind. I suspend this book in life. I want it to be eaten away by external things, and above all, by all the rending jolts, all the thrashings of my future self. All these pages float around like pieces of ice in my mind. Excuse my absolute freedom. I refuse to make a distinction between any of the moments of myself. I do not recognize any structure in the mind. We must get rid of the mind, just as we must get rid of literature. I say that the mind and life communicate on all levels. I would like to write a book which would drive men mad.
which would be like an open door leading them where they would never have consented to go. In short, a door that opens onto reality. And this is no more the preface to a book than the poems which are scattered here and there, or the enumeration of all the rages of ill-being. This is only a piece of ice, which is also stuck in my throat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there, I think this stands for itself.
It's tough.
Is there, if one says now, oh, Artaud, interesting, what should I read? What would you recommend to start with?
Oh, a good gate, a good door can be, the theater in its double. To go directly to the theory of theater, then one can also read his love letters, his intimate correspondence. If there's one artist who never separated private life and creation, it's Artaud. And it's fascinating to go through the... a letter for him. What an artistic medium. What an artistic creation. And it's a good recommendation. I think at least it's mine. And the other one is Van Gogh, The Suicide de la Société, so the society's suicide. So Van Gogh, the painter, Van Gogh. We pronounce like that, Marije. Vincent Van Gogh.
No, you have to really hurt your throat. Van Gogh. Van Gogh.
Van Gogh.
There is only one language that is more terrible than Dutch. This is Danish.
I think we win, though. Although Danish is pretty ugly, it's true. Sorry.
I have to. I will confess you afterwards. I cannot say this on air.
Okay.
Van Gogh, the Suicidal Society.
It's a society, yeah. It's an it's an exercise written by Artaud about the reception of Van Gogh's destiny, yes. And an essay, and it's not describing the painting. It's not celebrating Van Gogh. It's a tentative to extract the substance of this painter and this life of suffering. And through the words of Artaud, you really feel something, a new dimension of this painting and how language can be used to describe a visual experience. So, and then Artaud exists in many volumes, he wrote too much. You know why? Because he was a graphomaniac. So the hands naturally, his hand went in the space, and when he had a pen, whenever he had a pen, he was writing. So it was something interesting. It was part of his madness to write all the time. And get lost. Just get lost with Artaud. There is no logic in it.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I just was reminded, Theo, when you were saying, this is my opinion, this is my subjective understanding, and I don't wish to write in this quasi-objective thing, speaking for them. And I was just remembering what I thought then I wanted to give to you is when you said that Artaud spits on us, right? The future, he says, after me there is nothing. Yeah. And I was just thinking, when you say this, when you take this position very deep of being you, there is nothing after you. It holds for all of us. After you die, you are gone. That's it. Yeah. So it is
and if one comes to speak about you or to tell your life, he is an imposteur. It's a posture. Yeah. And there comes the big problem. And I did a lot for Artaud, but what did I do? I just spoke about him, and he doesn't want. I feel him right now with us, and he doesn't want.
Only when you speak about you. I think he will have a beer with you, or maybe some absinthe. I don't know what was his poison. Yeah. And now my burning question. Can I ask the burning question? I'll keep it very short. It's silly.
I thought it was a burning question. Yeah.
No, this is my burning question. It comes from the very first clip, which is that
it burns.
Yeah. Wait. Hold on. Hang on. Here it comes. So you start speaking very beautiful about Artaud, very deep, and then you put a very strange music underneath. And I was wondering, why this choice?
You mean the didgeridoo music, no? Yeah, why this? It's a good question.
It's a good question. Because you know a lot about drums. And I wanted for my speech to be accompanied with drum music, something that really makes you feel the Hertz, how do you say? The Hertz movement. And dombo, jumbo, 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 jumbo. And the didgeridoo, first I love that. I love this instrument. And I don't feel it so soft. I feel it's like a human. I don't know. I don't know exactly, but it's a very interesting question because I really wanted to bring an effect with this choice. A certain effect of
it's
organic,
considered a storyteller. It's considered a storyteller. The instrument itself is speaking.
Really? Go on, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not an expert and I cannot tell you much more, but in Aboriginal cultures, this is a way to tell stories and also to accompany stories. So it might have a real resonance with your feeling of wishing something that speaks, a voice.
But it's all about resonance, about vibration, how Artaud vibrates. So there is maybe an unconscious association to this instrument.
I was really surprised because for me, this instrument in particular speaks of a very long, organically existing culture of the Aboriginals that has existed longer than most of the cultures, and definitely our fleeting cultures, which is, I think, as these French voices are really struggling with that how to stay alive in this always encapsulating verfremdung, this like alienating cultures that we create with technology and with the whole mass production and estrangement. Yeah, which brings me to Rousseau, and then I will really stop. Sorry, Simon. I was on Wikipedia, and he does have a relation to nature. He is the famous nature and nurture debate.
Yeah.
Well, kids.
You just stick to Rambo.
Rousseau. Oui.
Rousseau.
So, what was your recommendation for Rousseau? And immediately after, I opened the book.
the scandalous book about pedagogy and the nature of man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I don't
know.
I don't know anything about. Yeah, good. I'm not a fan of Rousseau. I think he's the cause of a lot of sentimentalism, but maybe in his writings there's something else. So.
Yeah, many
romantic
big
sentimentalism.
Anyways, Artaud the same, I think, actually, to be honest.
Yeah,
and Rimbaud.
Yeah, they were really out of mind.
Maybe little different guys, but Romanticism comes in.
There is something about.
I think Artaud is not romantic. I think he's not romantic. I
No,
mean,
no,
not
no,
in the
but
sense.
he's
No, but
no, not he, but Romanticism. This like the what you say, the non-cruel imposter-like followers of a certain strong
That's
idea.
But I have a curiosity as I'm speaking to you, and you come from a different culture than mine, and it's so the context is very rich. And what is this external image you have from French thinkers? And so it's really all still related to Romanticism or something that is about seduction, because these figures exist in our sky as a constellation of, but there is an attraction that is caused by something really French. I can guess this feeling when you're speaking about, when you're talking about these authors.
For me, it's a lot about freedom, about freedom. And Romanticism, it was a European vice, I think, that is shared as much in a different way, maybe by the German. I think only the Dutch were completely free of Romanticism, and we just went to opportunism, and hypocrisy. We went directly to the other side.
Yeah, you went straight. The Romantics first had then they contradicted, then they went hypocrites. No, I don't know. It's.
I agree with you. I agree with you about the European phenomenon. Now I think about it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't really have, but there is some kind of interesting relation. When you ask me this, I think of Heinrich Heine. I don't know why, because Heinrich Heine was a German Jewish author, romantic author, who was only appreciated really in France. He was exiled to France, and he was appreciated there, and he was one of the. He has this bitter irony and this bitter sarcasm and very ambiguous writings and very good writings. But he was never. So this is a connection to France, to this romanticism, but which also has this clearness of rationality and of irony. And then at the same time, these
distance.
Yeah, the distance, and at the same time, the mystery or the spirituality, but always this kind of
not much.
What? No, what? Not much.
Sorry, I was just very softly commenting. Sorry.
This mystery, but then also this slight irony, this rationality. I don't know really how I would have to think more about that.
I think Liberté is really something so central to the French desire that a lot of the struggles, I think, find a core there that manifest in these different ways. Also the libertine and the revolution, of course, and then the Diderot and his trying to free themselves from ignorance, and a lot has to do with this freedom, liberté, la liberté. I think in the French, and probably its dark shadow, which is control. No, with Napoleon and Louis.
Centralism. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's another podcast.
Yes, Theo, when shall we?
Thank you for your answers. Yeah, no, thank you very much. I would just end by saying that Artaud is much more revered, venerated, admired, read out of France than in the country here. And this is a phenomenon that happens with many important writers. He is really recognized abroad. And so it drove me to many places, to the Americas, to the Scandinavia, to many places. And I was very happy to share that with you in a way that could have maybe not happened here with a French, a dialogue with a French theater artist. It's not to say that it's impossible, but it's not so frequent.
So thank you. This was the number 29. And if you like this podcast, then please share it and recommend it to your friends, your colleagues. And we will see you next week on Monday. We are going to speak about dialogues with friends. So it will be a non-theatrical, apparently non-theatrical topic. Speaking on the practice of dialogue with a friend of mine. Yeah, you can comment to us either on the website. If you click on the episode below, you can comment, or you can write emails to us, whiteroom@whiteroompod.com, or you can find us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. And yeah, I really like, although this rhythm is now a little bit tighter than before. I don't know if it will stay every week. If we have material, if we have fun, it will stay a little bit like this. In these times still of eternal lockdown, it is also good to come back and to speak. And yeah, let's see. As I said last time, maybe if it's everything different, then the podcast will go humanist, human only. So we will meet only in real, in the cafe and drink and talk. Yeah.
But you can tell it. You desire the death of this podcast.
In this form, I desire the death of this podcast in this form.
A victory, victory of
metamorphosis.
Presential.
First die. Yeah, first has to die, and then it can be reborn. That's true. Yeah. Okay, that was it for today's show. And why not? We are leaving you with some music from Jonas de Raaf, our accordionist player. As we are in France, Les Feuilles Mortes is also the time of Artaud, the big success and the beautiful tune song by Jacques Prévert, who another story. So France theater history is very full of nice connections, and yeah. So goodbye. See you next time.
Thank you so much,
Théophile. Thank you, Théophile. Thank you, Marije.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, Simon.